There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have, there's obviously many aspects. There's behavior is a key part of that. And of course, mindset is a big part of that, right? That we're going to talk about today. And there's, as we think, I think of it as mindset even more holistically, in the sense that as we think of ourselves, or as we think about who we are as a person, or as think about who we are as a professional, and how we show up, that is, if we individually thought of that, and if we each individually were to raise our own bar of how do I show up for my clients, how do I show up, how am I a representative of the industry when I show up? And I don't mean as a political representative, I don't mean posturing, I mean, am I showing up as someone like, maybe in a micro sense, like if I show up at my kid's soccer game, am I showing up as a parent that's that parent that people are like, oh, that's that parent that always yells, or that's that parent that is always on their phone or whatever? Or am I showing up as a parent that, wow, that parent's really engaged and supportive, and like being a great spectator, being a great parent of their kid, and if we, I mean, I've coached sports, so I mean, I think of that because I think of, oh, there's those parents, like I think of them, and not in a positive sense. And that's unfortunately, I think, what we've done to ourselves in how we show up, how we even sometimes speak about ourselves, is it's not reflecting well for some people, and other people are doing an amazing job of really raising the bar and really raising the positive, I guess, picture, or the positive view of us as realtors. So don't get me wrong, I know there's a lot of, probably you all, that if you're on this call, are the kind of people that are showing up in that way. And I think it truly is going to make the difference for us moving forward, if we as an industry want to actually be seen as something other than people who are fighting over commissions in the future.
Yeah. And it's almost like you've been on our calls, because we're just talking about the commissions piece. Yesterday, Philip was talking about it and saying, I mean, we were talking a little bit about the political sense too, because being a realtor a lot of times ends up being a little bit political as well, right? And because there's always people trying to change the laws and trying to also just they think we make too much money and all that other stuff too. So, but yeah, so that's really interesting. So showing up as your best self. And I love sports analogies for real estate because they're just so good. Sports, and I think health and fitness all are similar to real estate in so many ways. So yeah, so tell me, like, what is the mindset shift need to be where, how can we show up better then? Or what is it that you mentioned something to me about how can I, or versus.
Being you guys all know this stuff. Nothing I'm going to say today I hope is something you've not heard before, right? Yet, as we all know, the way that sometimes it's the moment that we're in that we hear something that maybe it resonates at that point, or it means something to us. And so your question, like, how do I look at that, or what do I look at in that? I think the biggest mindset shift that I remind myself of regularly is, I think was it Stephen Covey, that quote, I'm not a product of my circumstances, I'm a product of my decisions. And I kind of, as I resonate that, I look at that a little bit larger, not larger, but I expand that sentence and think, like, I don't have control over my circumstances, but what I do have control over is how I respond. I get to choose how I respond. That's one of the, I think Covey even talks about that. It's one of the fundamental things about being a human being is we get to choose. There's people in, we've all heard the famous stories of people in the worst possible situations in those camps and in the Holocaust. And why we hear about them is we hear about their mindset. We hear about what was different, excuse me, in their response to their situation. And why that's super relevant for us is, I mean, of course, right now we are in a situation where our market is shifting, and where we may see or hear news, or just the conversation in the office, or whatever, your clients are asking you questions. It's not typically framed around positivity, let's just say. And even when the market was hot, right, there was negatives that were being talked about. And so our opportunity is really, how do we show up with a mindset that says we are more than just opening doors for people. We are more than just people that are trying to make commission off of somebody, trying to, you ever hear the phrase people say to you, like, oh, I would have used you. And I think to myself, I don't want anybody to use me. I want somebody to hire me. Like I want you to choose to hire me because of what I bring to you as a realtor or as a coach. I want you to I don't want to think of it as being used, right? And I think we've done that to ourselves in our mindset around this stuff. And so when we think about how do we stay fresh in a place like this, it's not, again, nothing new, like you guys have heard this, yet it's important because truly that freedom to choose our response to our situation is so critical if we're going to have any hope of, being truly successful, I guess you could say, in the outcomes of that, because we truly get to choose. We don't get to choose outcomes, by the way. You guys know that, right? We don't get to choose the outcomes of things. What we can choose is we can choose what we put into it, and we can think about what did we put in? Do we put in the right ingredients, and then what happened? And that's not being there's that whole victim sort of, like accountability and victim sort of, kind of tension that we all live in, right? And truly, we all have moments of victim mentality, right? Let's not try to say like you can never think that way. That's going to happen. And I think you guys have all probably heard of that book, 5 Minute Funeral. What that fundamental principle is mourn. If let's say it's a big situation that happens to you or happens around you, or you get in a car accident or something bigger happens, yes, acknowledge it, mourn it, and give it the appropriate amount of time, and then make a decision about how you're going to move forward. It's what do you do next is the difference in terms of who you are. You get a bad phone call with another realtor or from your client or from, the press puts out something that's about you. It's what you do next is the difference, right?
Yeah.
We've all seen it. We've seen CEOs that screw up, and we all sit there and judge, okay, what are they going to do next? That's how we see the character of who somebody is. It's not whether or not life happens. It's not whether enough, stuff shows up. It's how can I move forward from this in a way that what can I do next to make the next best decision? Make a decision and make the next best decision after that decision if it wasn't the right decision, right?
Yeah, you're reminding me. I've been rewatching Ted Lasso. Have you seen that show?
I haven't seen it in a while.
Oh my God, Jason Sudeikis is hilarious. But they lose a big game where they finally actually played well, but they still lost. And that it's soccer. And he says, I want you all to be goldfish. And he says, because of the 5 minute funeral mentality, right? So you mourn it, and then you become a goldfish and move on. Like goldfish has very short memory, right? So that's why. So that's really funny. So I love what you said about that, and specifically, I mean, Gary Keller always says, right, what you do now matters way more than what happens in the market. Mm-hmm. And so that's such an important thing to really acknowledge. And so making that decision to move forward, right? How do we show up so that we're not being used? That is such a good one. People always say that, or even when I say, who did you buy your house with? They'll say, oh, we used so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And I've never really thought of it like that until you said it. So that's really good. So for me, where that resonates is how, I don't know, for me, my head goes to social media a lot. Like in terms of how do we show up? Like I think about some of the realtors out there who are doing a great job at like really attracting people and being like appearing in such a way that you would go, I would totally hire her or him to help me. Do you see people like that online?
Oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah. Well, and even you just said online, I want you guys, it's just as a fun exercise over the next week, when you look at realtor stuff online or whatever, look at how many times we even say, use me, like we use the term like ourselves, and I'm not saying I never use it, because I probably forget, because it's just built into our industry, right? And you go on those forums where people are griping about, stuff that happened in our industry, right? Or whatever that went on. Oh, I had this buyer that blah, blah, blah. Go on and read the way that we all refer to ourselves. And if you stop and actually, like, if you have that out of body moment, kind of in a way where you look back on yourself, or you look back on what you're seeing outside of, with a clarity that is different than being in it, right? And it's like you go, wow, if we heard ourselves right now, or if you really hear what from the, at least what I'm saying is, you hear it with ears that somebody else would hear it, it's like, wow, we're not really respectful of ourselves. We don't see ourselves in a high enough light. We're just like, yeah, I mean, we use that term, and I think we mean it for many people. They actually think like, I just want to be used. They hate to admit that, but that's, use me. And it's like, no, hire me because I'm worth being hired.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like another thing in our lives that we would say, oh, I use that person for that. Like, I don't know, that's just so weird. Yeah, you would obviously hire a landscaper or
Well, we
like,
do say it. We say it about, who do I use? What landscaper do you use? Or what electrician do you use? Or we say
yeah,
that, right? And I'm not, it's hard because it's part of our vernacular as a,
yeah.
socially, I guess
Well,
you could say.
yeah, and language influences culture, but culture
Mhm.
influences language. So it's like this ongoing cycle. So I mean, I think that, okay, everyone on this call, tell one person today to stop use me, right? Like, let's cause a little bit of a ripple effect with that, because hire me is what it should be, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, we're not going to get it perfect. And the best thing we can do is do our best to show up. Right. I tell my son, it's like, it isn't that I expect perfection. He's young. I said, no, it's just, what do you do next? That's really where the rubber meets the road. That all we do in life, truly, I mean, there's a lot of things, but everything boils down to mindset. I mean, think of when I think back on the story of of those different people that we hear about from the Holocaust, everything in their life was stripped out of their life. There was nothing left but mindset. That's all they had was mindset. And the reason we read about them today is because of that. I mean, that's it. And if we think about all our lives and think about what we could do if we shift our mindset in any area of our life, that's the life hack, is mindset. And I know it's a word we throw around. Yeah, let's think about it. Let's think about, where we can find tools. I love Stephen Covey's his chapter on that, I guess, is so, it's so relevant, it's so perfect. It just covers that subject so well. And yet people, I think, oh, it's an old book. No, the truths are still the truths. They're still there.
yeah. Interesting story about Stephen Covey. I actually met the guy, and I said I work for Keller Williams, and he said, oh, Gary and I used to talk like about these same principles a lot. We have a lot in common.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Hey, you said something earlier about like the negativity in the office, for example, not just in the office, but news, the office in general, just out there, regarding the shift. So I think, we're the conversations that I've been hearing is, okay, this many realtors are going to get out of the business now, and this many, now there's this much less market share, and this many less, homes to be sold next year, and all of that stuff. And I kind of go back to the beginning of COVID, when we were also talking about that, and then we were basically saying as an industry that nobody has so much market share that even a 20% decline in market share would really make a difference necessarily on your business, because it's really more about what you're doing right now. But what do you think? Like, what is something that you've shifted in terms of your actions now that we're going into this we are in the shift? Is there anything specific that you've doubled down on, or like, what are you doing to take the next step?
Yeah, and I'll be honest and say, like, I tactically, like, oh, am I, doubling down on this sort of lead generation or this type of thing? I truly haven't, for myself, like, really thought, where am I truly going to hone in on certain things other than mindset, I would say, because I thought I need to see this for what it is, and I need to own that. I know that things I do, I mean, I do probably more coaching than selling these days, because I'm so passionate about it. Yet some of the agents I'm coaching, I'm really in their day-to-day business. So it's like I'm doing the business like with somebody,
Yeah.
And what I would say is that for me, the opportunity I see, and I was just talking to our leadership in our office about it, is this is a time when people need to look at it as opportunity to engage in their why. Like, why am I doing this? Because here's the thing, you guys, we don't, like, all of us aren't going to stay in this industry forever. And this may be that season where we say, you know what, I see opportunity to go do something else here. I see opportunity to engage in this other type of work, or to take the skills I've learned here and pivot slightly and aim them at something else. And I would love to look at the fact that we may, that half the realtors that are licensed in this country would see an opportunity to do something that really better serves their family, or better serves their life, or better serves what they're passionate about. That's how I'd like to look at it, rather than people are going to, you know, go out of business, or whatever the phrase that we might attach to that. That's really where I'm at, is like, where can I see opportunity to help encourage people to move into their passion. I've already had an agent that I encouraged in that, and he wrote me back, and he was so grateful that I helped him see something in his life that he's truly passionate about, that he's pursuing. And he's like, I don't know why I didn't see that before, but you helped walk me through and understanding that this is truly what I'm passionate about and what I want to do. And I was like, he's kind of like, sorry for you know, leaving. And I'm like, no, don't be sorry. I'm excited for you. Like, I want you, just like a good employer, you know, you guys know this, right? If you're truly a good leader, your job is to help other people reach their goals. And if they're on your team, or you're running, let's say you're running a business, well, we're all running businesses, but let's say you're running some other kind of business, and you help somebody go work in a different field because that's what they're passionate about. That's a win, not a loss, you guys. And I think that's where our opportunity, once again, it's all mindset, right? So our opportunity here is to see this shift as an opportunity for people to either really engage and see what part of the industry they feel passionate about and where they can really do it. And also look at, hey, you know what? I've been doing this for a little while, or I've been doing this for a long while, and maybe this is that opportunity for me to really look at, because right now the job market there's so many jobs out there. There are people losing their jobs, but there's also tons out there. So maybe I can look at where I focus, or maybe I can look at how I focus my time. You know, I've got an agent right now that says, I said, hey, let's work on you focusing 20 hours, 15 to 20 hours a week. And that's it. And that gives you, and we're going to make the most of that. And that's instead of like, you just need to work more. You just need to work more. That's where her head was been at, and it's stressing her out. And I was like, no, just think of it as let's maximize 15 to 20 hours a week and call it good. And if you can do a good job within that window, then we'll call that a win, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of eye-opening in terms of like, really, well, you started this by saying that I need to see this for what it is. And I think that's the piece that people freak out about, because they will literally hear about somebody leaving, but not really understanding that, hey, maybe this was an eye-opener for that person, and that they actually realized what they're passionate about, or that they're passionate about something else. So that, don't let that get to yourself, right? If this is your passion, then you stick it out. It doesn't mean, you know, that you're out too, or whatever. It's not necessarily an indicator of that, right? So yeah, Heather, work smarter, not harder. Yes. My coach always asks me, how can you, it's basically the 12-week year mentality. So she's always like, how can you accomplish your entire year in the first quarter? Or how can you accomplish your 5-year goal in just 1 year? And it's sort of that, like, hey, max output. It doesn't have to be more hours, but max output in that shorter time. So how do you structure that into your schedule? What would you do to maximize your time like that?
Well, one thing that I found really helpful is to not be in, and again, you guys have all heard this, and yet, I mean, we all struggle with it at times, right? There's this mentality of abundance or mentality of sort of lack, right? And we all struggle. There's times when we just feel like, gosh, you know, we're all going to find ourselves in probably either one of those at times, right? So in this time, you could say, reason I bring that up is this is a time where you could say, you know, wow, I don't have enough time to do all these things, or I need to make twice as many calls, and how am I going to possibly do that? Or I need to get this many things done. Or like, I've got, like, one of the challenges that's really, we all run into is when and how to delegate. Well, delegation is there's a couple different like things that internally are fighting us in that. And one of them is a mindset of, I'm not going to pay somebody. Like, why would I pay somebody to take photos? I can take them myself. You know, it's this idea that this sort of, it's like a business lack mentality. You're not, and I hate to call it that, but you could say, well, it's budgeting, or well, I need every dime. Well, it's like, well, what if you took that time and reinvested it in other parts of your business that pay off more? And yeah, you can take that too far. I mean, you have to watch your finances. Yet, if you really look at where you can leverage, and what I'm getting at is you guys all know the word leverage. Where can I leverage in a way that really frees me up, whether it's time wise or also emotionally? If there's something that really is causing me stress, like if I'm getting in trouble for turning my paperwork all the time because it's not right or something about it, is, well, find a TC that's a cheap way to take a lot of stress off of your life. And if it's more stressful for you to have somebody else do it, well, look at why that is. Look at, the area of your life that you're trying to control, something that really is a job that you can find somebody that's very skilled at to do, and say, is there somebody out there that I can find that can do as good or better a job, right? That's the leverage model. Where is there somebody out there, and often there is somebody that can replace you at an equal to or higher level for a much lower dollar per hour. And especially in TC work,
The focusing question for that for me personally has been like, I mean, I think leverage is hard to do anyway at any given time for
Right.
a lot of realtors, because we're all like a one-man show,
Yeah.
So I used to have a sticky note on my computer corner that said, who can do this for me, for like 3 years straight, like a big yellow sticky note, who can do this for me? And it finally like sunk in 3 years later. But one thing is, often you can find someone to do something for free. Like it doesn't actually even have to necessarily cost you money. You're just thinking that you have to do it and someone else doesn't. And then the other focusing question for me is, what can I stop doing that if I stop doing it, no one would notice that I stopped doing it?
Yeah.
Right? Like what is it that I can take off my calendar and that no one would even care that it wasn't there anymore, right? And so that's been a big one for me, because I think we all tell ourselves a story about why we should be doing certain things, or how we're not doing something that we maybe because we don't have time or whatever it is, right? So yeah, that looking at the calendar from the perspective of what can I stop doing to get more, money productive is definitely a good one.
Yeah.
So leverage, and then what else?
Well, you just hit on it. So like, you guys all know there's a million things we can do, right? Everybody out there is telling us what lead gen thing we could do, or what. I hate the word lead gen because it encompasses so much. Like and yet we say it like it's a one task, like go pick up your coffee cup, go lead gen. Like, okay, I'm lead genning. What am I actually doing? Right? And so when I think of it's the one thing, right? I mean, the good news is, you guys, we don't have to reinvent or invent anything. All this stuff's been talked about. All this stuff, there's been books written about it. So I just keep going back to the books and the resources that are out there. So we just one thing it and say, we are in a market where there are going to be less. In our market particularly, there's still scarcity of houses, and yet there's a balancing of obviously interest rates. We'll just call it the consumer psyche, like what's going on in the mind of the consumer, and whether or not they think it's good to buy with this interest rate, or whether or not they think, whatever they think around that. And so what's weird about our market is that where we have still less houses than we need for people normally transacting, yet buyers that are kind of in a weird place about it, and sellers that are not wanting to put their house in the market because they don't want to lose their interest rate, and because they don't want to buy with a higher interest. So it's like, it just keeps our inventory tight. And yet we have this as realtors, we're all in this weird mindset around it. And it's like, okay, how can we super focus and get focused on what is the one thing for us, not for, your one thing, Sonia, and my one thing are different, and maybe they're the same. Yet when we sit in a class or we hear people talk about it, we start all attaching ourselves to this, oh, I need to do that. And then, 3 days later, we see a webinar, oh, I should be doing that. And this is not new. We all know that we've all been doing this. Yet in this market, if we have to make, let's say, I hate this thought, but if we have to make twice as many calls, then we have to one thing that whole thing and say, if I'm going to be doing that, I need to make sure that's an activity that is productive. If truly that's just the way it is, if it's a numbers game, then I have to do that. How can I do it my best? I get to choose my inputs to that. I can't choose how people are going to respond, but I can choose what I put out there. So what areas can I really hyper focus and keep it down to keep the confusion or keep the clutter in our lead gen or in our business limited so that we can actually have better effect in those areas, because we're going to need that. We're going to, in this market, we are definitely going to be in the right thing and say, I own it, this is where I'm at, what am I going to do to move forward, what can I do given the market situation and my inputs to it to try to get a result.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Does anybody, Philip, you guys have any thoughts on this, or does anyone have any thoughts on this? Anything you heard that you?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard it for quite a while about the idea of people pivoting or changing passions. I love how you put that. I wrote that down because as a coach, as a mentor, as a person working with a group of agents, real estate isn't for everyone. People find out either quickly or through attrition that it's not for them, right? Mm-hmm. But if they leave as a better person and better husband, wife, whatever in life, then I think there's an opportunity, because everyone that we know on our cell phone, 6% of them will buy or sell real estate over a period of time, right? Whether it's every year, every 2 years, whatever. And I'm going to throw this out there. All those friendships that we have in real estate, and we have some teammates on the call, hey, when they transition to something that they're more passionate about, they still should be referring those people to somebody. And God bless, they kept their license relatively active and get a 25% or a 50% referral fee through that process. Those families still get the best representation ever, us on this call, and they may make some money to keep funding that passion and perfect life. But that's some of the things that kind of optimize my thinking around what we're doing. I actually have to leave the meeting. We're going to do a huddle, but I think you should be good. But thank you guys so much. That was awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, so yeah, okay. I love that. You guys. Thank you so much, Erik, by the way, for hopping on this so quickly. Will you put your information in the chat for everyone? So Erik's in Portland, Oregon, you guys. If you need a, referral partner up there, and, like each other on Facebook or Instagram or whatever,